everybody, Josh Sheridan here with the Barely Legal Podcast.
They demand my alter ego, but I won't go.
On today's show, we have Hillsborough County Criminal Defense Royalty, Pinellas County Defense Royalty, Danny Hernandez, nice enough to stop by amidst apocalyptic days, pandemics, whatnot, and kind of tell us about his take on what's going on in the court system, how they're handling this COVID issue, and tell us a little bit about his journey as a criminal defense attorney and where he grew up and things like that. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I've never been called royalty, so I'm very, very honored.
Well, I've had cases against you. I've had cases with you, and you are definitely a pillar of the legal community. So it's definitely an honor to have you on.
Well, thank you very much. I greatly appreciate it.
Now, Hernandez is a very rare name in Hillsborough County. You don't run into too many Hernandezes. So are you from here originally?
I was born and raised in Tampa. Spent most of my childhood either in West Tampa, where I lived, and Ybor City, where my dad worked. And yes, it's a very rare name in Tampa. It's funny because when I was in law school in Gainesville back in the 70s, I actually had a professor had a hard time figuring out how to pronounce it.
Oh, really?
Which was shocking to me because,
well, Gainesville back then was
Gainesville
backwoods, yeah.
Yeah, Gainesville back then wasn't exactly, Hispanics were not that well known there.
Well, yeah, and they became known for Hernandez much later in time,
yeah,
too.
That's true.
Some irony there. So, were you an only child? Do you have siblings?
No, I have a brother. He's
Okay.
8 years older.
Okay.
And so that's my only sibling. But
Does he live here locally, or?
He does. He's an insurance salesman, pretty much semi-retired now. But he lives in Tampa, and we were both born and raised in the same areas. He got married probably about at 18 or 19, so that was that's when he left the nest.
Big brothers are pretty important for younger brothers. One of the recurring themes that I hear a lot, I like to talk a lot about music with people on the show, and big brothers always seem to be the entry point for younger brothers into their cultural tastes.
Absolutely. A lot of the songs of the 50s are very familiar to me.
Yeah.
Even though I was, normally wouldn't be listening to rock music, but because of my brother, I was very versed in Sam Cooke and all of the, stars of the 50s.
You got a jump on all your friends who maybe were only children or weren't the youngest in the family.
Exactly.
So, where did you go to high school?
I graduated from Plant.
Okay.
I actually went to Jefferson my sophomore year, and that's when they closed down.
Okay.
To the old Jefferson, and then I went to Plant in '68 and '69. So
what did your parents do?
My mother was a homemaker. My father was the manager of several theaters for a company that managed. Back then, there was something called drive-in theaters.
Oh, for sure. I know there was one out there by the DMV on.
But that's the only one left.
That's all I knew about. Yeah.
Well, to my knowledge, that's the only one left. But
Yeah.
back then, there were like 6 or 7. But he was also the manager of the Ritz Theater in Ybor City for
sure.
Probably about 12 years. So.
Wow. Now, was that an actual cinema or was it a music?
No, it was an actual cinema. They
Okay.
used to play have a triple feature on Saturdays, something that you don't hear about anymore.
Yeah.
You could go at noon and stay there until 8 or 9 o'clock watching 3 different movies.
That's amazing. And now I've heard there's a potential for resurgence of drive-in movies amidst all this virus.
I saw the same article in the paper that you did.
That would be kind of cool, I think.
It would be.
That's, as dark and as kind of worrisome as current events are, I have this kind of abiding feeling that this might bring about some welcome changes in the way that day-to-day life looks. I don't know. I'm trying to be optimistic about it all.
I suspect some changes will be positive. Probably not the majority of the changes. I guess, the drive-in theater, you have to put up with some things. In the summer, you have to have. They had this little thing that you put by your window that was let out some smoke, and it shoot away the mosquitoes and things that you don't worry about too much anymore.
Right.
But that was something that was common.
That's funny. So now, after high school, did you go straight to University of Florida?
No, I went to USF. I got my undergraduate degree at USF, and then I went to the University of Florida and got my law degree there. So I was
What was your
there,
undergraduate in?
political
Political
science.
science.
Yeah.
Okay. And then University of Florida. Did your brother go through college, or were you the?
No, I was the only one that got a college degree. He did go to college, but not he didn't. He didn't get his degree, and he went to the University of Tampa. So it was a totally
Okay.
different path.
Are you the only attorney in the family?
No, I have a cousin, Darlene Bearer, who's also
really?
a cousin of mine.
I know her. I didn't
Yeah.
know she was your cousin.
Yeah.
She's just right up the road. Are you guys
She's-
in the same complex?
No, no, no. She's about maybe 4 blocks north
Right
of
on
me.
the same stretch.
On
though.
Armenia, exactly. Very close, but about four blocks down.
I think one of her associates. I'm trying to remember his name. Anyway, yeah. Wow, I didn't know that was your cousin. So then law school at University of Florida. And what did you do coming out of law school?
I immediately went to work for the state attorney's office.
Which county?
Hillsborough County.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, I was a prosecutor for 6 years.
Who was
And,
the head state attorney back then?
At E.J. Salsinas.
Okay.
And I left in 82, at the end of 82. And I worked for a civil firm for just a short time, insurance defense firm, and pretty much opened up my practice that I have now. I opened it up in 1983.
83, 93, 2000. I mean, you're coming up on what? 30.
I don't even want to talk
Yeah, I
about
know,
that.
scary, but-
Let's change the subject.
Yeah.
But no, it's approaching. Yeah, it's approaching. I guess 40. I have to do the math.
That's crazy. I
Yeah.
mean, I always appreciate to see guys of your stature who have kind of made it to the other side of their career, because sometimes it seems insurmountable, you know.
I really enjoy what I do. Like anything else, it has its good days and its bad days. There's, certain cases that you much prefer over others. But overall, I really like what I do. And, I start getting asked more and more about, you thinking about retirement. And the honest answer is no, I'm not, because I don't have any hobbies unless you want to count watching Gator football.
And eating
and
amazing
eating,
meals.
yeah.
through
And
this day.
there's got to be limits to that. So no, as long as I'm physically and mentally able to do what I do, I want to stay doing what I do for as long as I can.
Well, my dad, he was a school teacher, and then he retired as a school teacher, but he was obsessive compulsive by trade. And so when he stopped teaching, he became a house cleaner. And he had 6 families, and he would do clean houses 6 days a week. And I think he ended up making more money cleaning houses than he was making teaching school. But he was a robust, physically fit, guy. But he ended up hurt himself, broke his leg putting up a carport, and he had to stop cleaning houses. And that was, you could demarcate when he didn't have, quote unquote, a purpose to his day anymore, that everything just kind of started to tail off.
Exactly. It's a big part of my day, and if even with all this stuff going on now with this virus, I find myself at times wondering, what am I going to do next? I've got to keep busy, and I don't build things. I don't have any hobbies. I'm not a good handyman. I am pretty useless in many ways, but I love the practice of law, and yes, I hope that retirement doesn't come soon.
I've always dreamt of having the ability to practice, but not needing to do it,
Sure.
financially speaking. I think that would be liberating and allow me to be much more
Selective.
of what cases I take, feel more strongly about positions I take. There was a judge who I'm not going to give the name of over in Pinellas County that I always said if I won the lottery, I was going to put an ad in the paper that I would take any case in front of this judge pro bono, provided they let me take it to trial. I haven't won the lottery yet, but and I think cooler heads have prevailed on that offer. But I've always, I always think part of my problem with practicing law is having to do it for a living versus.
Well, and one of the things that I have been trying to do more and more, and I've pretty much done it, is do strictly criminal defense.
Yeah.
I used to do some family law, and pretty much I didn't enjoy it, to be honest
very
with you.
tough stuff. Yeah.
And a couple of other areas.
Not that criminal defense isn't tough, but it's a different type of tough.
It's
yeah.
a different kind of tough. I know you do a lot of family, and I I never particularly cared for that area, and I was a prosecutor for the minute that I got my law license, and I still like criminal defense. It's what I really enjoy, the blood and the guts, and I guess all the uh, they don't make too many TV shows about people that write contracts.
Yeah, that's
So
it's not one of the sexier areas at all. Now,
exactly.
did you ever have a partner, or have you always been solo?
No, I've always been solo. I've worked with many attorneys on cases together, and I've had associates on occasion, but it's always been my practice.
Now, you also do what's it called? Not conflict counsel, but like the government appointed.
I do. In fact, I have right now a handful, at least, more than a handful of pending murder cases that I've all appointed. I don't have any. My private practice right
There's not
now.
a lot of people who can afford to hire a private attorney for
It's
a murder
hard.
case. Yeah.
Exactly.
Sure OJ
All my
or,
capital murder cases are appointed, and that's a good chunk of my practice.
How many murder cases would you approximate you've done in your career?
Over 50.
Yeah.
I've probably closer to 100.
Are you death penalty certified?
I am.
What is it? What does that require?
It just requires taking CLE. There is a requirement that you have to sit in on a number of cases and try a number of felony cases, which I exceeded, of course, years ago. And you have to attend CLE classes dealing with the death penalty.
Yeah.
But it's a significant part of there's obviously every case has an awful lot of discovery, a lot of reports, a lot of reading,
Right.
and but I enjoy it. That's something that I really enjoy.
I used to make the joke, and this is probably the joke that someone who hasn't done a bunch of murder cases would make, but I always equated murder cases to batteries that just went one step further, as compared to certain cases like even a DUI where you're pulling breath records and you're judging field sobriety exercises.
I'm not minimizing the seriousness of these cases, and
Well,
they
it's
are
much more grave in
and
nature.
they're
for
much
sure.
more grave. But and I'm not going to name names, but I've always felt this way. But it happened to me on a case where a defendant was charged with several murders and an attempted murder, and it's much harder to deal with an attempted murder than a murder case
Yes.
because sadly, in a murder case, the accuser, the ultimate accuser, the deceased, is deceased.
Right.
But I had a case where it was a federal case where you had several murders, sort of a racketeering kind of situation. But the most devastating count was the attempted murder, because the attempted murder involved a victim who was now a paraplegic as the result of the shooting.
Yeah.
And he comes in as comes into the courtroom,
Very credible, very
extremely
sympathetic,
pathetic person, that's witness that's testifying, and he points to my client that's the man that put me in this wheelchair. So it's harder, So in many cases, you're right. It's a battery case that went bad.
Well, and it's similar in some ways in the civil arena with auto accidents versus wrongful death, or injury cases versus wrongful death. In a kind of a morbid irony, cases where the person was injured severely but lived are usually worth more than those where the person perished, because
Sure.
their cost of living with that handicap for the rest of their life versus
It's
some
part of the equation.
yeah,
Sure.
it's much more difficult. So it's kind of there's this morbid judgment that we use, whether it's criminal or civil, and looking at cases. And if something's a quote unquote good case, it's usually because it's a horrific accident, which is probably one of the big reasons why attorneys get a bad rap, is because they kind of are looking at it in an inverted way.
From a different way. Yeah.
For sure. Now, a couple things that I kind of know the answers to, but as the listenership of the show grows, not everybody that follows this is an attorney or has been a part of the legal system. But so I went to Stetson, and I grew up with Judge Demers's daughter. Went to school with Judge Demers's daughter. Ended up being his teaching assistant when I was at Stetson, and did trial with him, and I remember speaking to him at one point, and you always get the question, how can you represent the criminals? And not a verbatim quote, but he said he said two things. Number one is, if you're going to be a defense attorney, get used to representing guilty people. Number one, and number two is, the system is only as strong as how it treats its weakest link or whatever. So
Exactly. I've been asked that question probably over 100 times in my career. And I answer it pretty much the same way, is this, that everybody is entitled to legal representation as part of the judicial system. It's due process. And my job is to defend that person to the best of my abilities and make sure that their constitutional rights are being protected. It really is, my job is much easier than, say, a juror that has to make the decision as to whether the person is guilty or not, and in some cases that can mean life in prison or the death penalty, or a judge who's got to make the tough call and decide what the sentence is if the defendant is found guilty. My job is to advocate, to present the case, defend the client, present the case in the most favorable light to my client. And that's my job, and it's part of the system. It doesn't make me, I don't have any problem sleeping at night because I represent people that sometimes have committed horrific crimes.
now, in the death cases, does that weigh on you? Their existence, their physical existence being kind of predicated on the outcome of whatever the case is?
Well, it does carry a heavy burden, and I do take them very seriously. But you can't take each case personally.
Sure.
Because if you take it personally, you can't do this job for an extended period of time. So, although it does carry a heavy burden for me, and I take it very seriously. No, I don't think I take any case personally to the extent that it affects my life.
Is that something you've had to work on? Is that something you've become better at over the course of your career? Or
I think so, sure, because you learn from experience, and the fact that I've been doing this for a long time, I think does prepare me to better accept certain outcomes.
Sure, yeah. Now, have you ever thought about judge?
No, never did.
No.
I never did. I mean, it's too late for me now to be thinking about it. But it was mentioned several times over the course of years, and I never gave it any serious thought.
Right.
It's I respect the judges; they've got a tough job, but I always prefer doing what I do.
Yeah. Now, your practice, is it pretty evenly split on both sides of the bay? I mean, my first experience of you was when I was a prosecutor over in Pinellas. I'm racking my brain trying to remember the name of the person, which we probably wouldn't say it on the radio anyway, but I remember it was in front of Judge Peters, and literally for the entirety of my time in Division A, that case was hanging around. The guy had like 18 continuances, and it wasn't your doing. It was, I can't remember what it was about the case. I've asked you about it before, and at times I think you've recalled who it is that I'm talking about. But
right now it doesn't come to mind. There's one name that comes to mind, but I think it was with a different prosecutor that sort of fits that description. But in answer to your question, I right now, because I'm actually on the capital murder list in several circuits, I actually do more traveling than I was, say, 10 years ago.
What other circuits are you working in?
I'm working. I have murder cases in Marion County.
Oh, I was hoping you didn't say Marion County. Marion County is just a different world.
Well, I've gotten used to it, I guess.
Yeah.
I've had cases in Sarasota, Manatee. I
love Sarasota, Manatee. They're very laid back.
And I also have two right now pending in DeSoto County in Arcadia.
Oh, wow.
So,
I've never been there, but at Arcadia, wasn't there like a string of like serial murders in Arcadia?
I guess. I think when I was growing up, I don't know if it's still there, it was where they housed certain insane, they had some kind of insane asylum there, I think. I may be wrong.
I remember my dad always saying something when I was growing up about sending me to Arcadia.
Well, Arcadia there's not much in Arcadia, but they have a great seafood restaurant called Magnolia's. Okay. So anyone that's in Arcadia should get the fried.
I want to wrap up talking about your diet when we get to that point. But Yeah, Marion County. So I've had a handful of cases up there, but the thing that kills me in Marion is you have zero discretion over your hearings. Like you come in and right off the bat, it's arraignment, pretrial motion, pretrial conference, and trial, and it doesn't matter what you have scheduled that day.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. I've been able to occasionally work around it, such as I've had occasional I've had a couple of instances where I've been able to do a stipulation for continuance signed by the prosecutor and the judge signing off on it, and the pretrial conference is just moved to the next
Sure.
cycle.
Well, that's one of the list of things that I admire about you is the way that you conduct yourself. There's a handful of attorneys that I would call distinguished gentlemen. There's you, there's Dick Watts, there's some of these other guys that they come in, and when they say something, everybody takes them at their word. They're not questioned. They're not perceived as trying to pull one over. And whether you've done that by design or just as kind of an extension of who you are, I don't think there's anybody on either side of the bar or the bench that would have anything negative to say about you. And your word is taken at face value, which.
Well, I greatly appreciate that. I guess it's the way I was raised. I
Yeah.
mean,
Well, it's not across the board at all, and it's not, as much as people sometimes kind of say it's an age thing. There's some people that I've run into that have been doing this for quite a while, and I'm just like, the fact you still have a bar license blows my mind. So it's definitely appreciated. But how do you find? I started in Pinellas County under Bernie, and there was all the things you heard about that office, and then started to do more defense over in Tampa under Ober, and then now Warren. How have you seen those counties evolve over time?
I think it's more consistent across the board now than it was 30, 40 years ago. There used to be a lot of bad blood between Hillsborough and Pinellas when I was a prosecutor and then started out as a defense attorney. And quite honestly, Hillsborough defense attorneys were initially not looked well upon in Pinellas, but I think that,
Teamed, yeah.
but that seems to have gone away, and certainly how you conduct yourself and the reputation you develop is going to affect how you're going to be treated by prosecutors and judges.
Right.
So I think it's much more, and as I told you, I practice in a lot of different counties. And I enjoy the variety, and I do see differences, but ultimately it boils down to the same thing.
Sure.
And it's, hopefully your reputation in one county, somebody passes it over to because I do appear sometimes before judges that I've never appeared before, but hopefully your reputation precedes you.
Yeah. Now, did you say? I think I heard you say you're federally certified as well.
I am. I have federal cases. I am a member of the Middle District of Florida. I mean, I'm also a member of the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals and the Supreme Court, but I've never appeared before the Supreme Court.
So these cases on a federal level, my wife for a period of time, she did an internship with the U.S. Attorney's Office. I know a number of people who have worked there, both sides. Judge Kavakovich lived across the street from me growing up.
Oh.
So I've always had kind of a distant relationship and understanding with the federal court, but it scares the hell out of me. I've just heard, from a defense attorney perspective, if they file a case, it's usually airtight. You don't get your discovery till the last minute. There's not a lot of cutting any deals. It's kind of trial by fire.
To much extent, what you're saying is true. You don't get many cases filed in federal court that are really weak cases, and occasionally that you might see in state court. The judges are all extremely qualified. I've practiced in front of Judge Bucklew and Judge Kovacevic for 30 years, and you don't get plea agreements like you get in state court. The government doesn't offer you a specific deal. You sign a 17-page
like an open
plea, basically. That they recommend, the government will recommend this and the government will recommend that. But honestly, when you sign the paper, you don't still know what you're getting, and there's sentencing guidelines that are going to be applied. But a defendant who signs a plea agreement in federal court really doesn't have any guarantee of what his sentence is going to be, as opposed to a plea agreement in state court.
Right, right. Have you ever had any scary experiences with people that you've represented or people involved in the cases that you've represented? I have.
Well, I have a great example.
Well, please tell me, because I have one that I still to this day keeps me up at night sometimes.
Well, no, I have never. Overall, I can't think of many examples. Certain clients you're a little more wary of, but I had a bad experience 2 years ago. I had a client in Marion County, a murder case. The defendant was found guilty. During the trial, he just, was a perfect gentleman. And as the jury was walking away from the courtroom, he started punching, and I was the main target until the bailiffs.
Oh my God.
He just started swinging. I assume he was aiming at me, but I
Did
think
he
he was
connect with
just.
you?
Oh yeah, I got hit in the back about 4 times.
Oh no.
And fortunately, he was to my left, and I was looking to my right where the jury was, so I didn't turn around.
And
I didn't
touch it on
get
the
punched
chin,
in the
yeah.
face
Yeah.
or anything, which could have been much more serious. But if you got a moment, I'm going to elaborate a little bit.
Please.
It's funny now. It wasn't funny at the time. My glasses went flying, and I'm walking away from where the bailiffs are securing him. There's about 4 bailiffs, fighting with him. But I realized I had lost my glasses, and I didn't know where my glasses were. And instead of going forward, I thought I had left them back where the bailiffs and the defendant are fighting.
Right.
And I didn't want to drive back from Marion County.
Are you like
without
completely blind with that?
No, I'm
or-
not completely blind. It's blurry, but
Yeah.
in daylight I could have driven okay, but I still didn't
Yeah.
want that to happen. So I actually turn around and go back towards the fracas, not because I want to be brave, but because I want
your
to
glasses,
recover my
yeah.
glasses.
Yeah.
And as I'm kind of poking my hands where they probably shouldn't be, I start seeing this something that appeared to me like copper wire. And I didn't understand what it was, but my hands, and then I finally found the glasses to the side. But what it was is they were tasing him.
Oh no, you were
And
grabbing the taser.
I was well, I didn't get tased, but I was sticking my hands where I was very close to getting tased.
Oh, wow.
And it's funny now. It certainly wasn't funny back then.
Oh yeah, there's was it Don O'Sullivan or Don? Do you remember him? He was an older Irish attorney over at Pinellas County.
No.
Sullivan O'Sullivan. I remember, and when I worked there for 3 years, and I saw him punch 3 different times by defendants while he was.
I know there was a public defender here in Hillsborough. This is 30 years ago, and he was legally blind.
Mm-hmm.
And he just gets, in the middle of the trial, got cold cocked
Yeah.
right in the face.
Yeah, scary stuff. Did you know Alan Allweiss? He's an attorney.
I
over at Pinellas.
remember him. He
His
was
daughter
kind of.
Robin was a prosecutor over there.
Did he get hit?
I know. The story was, and I never confirmed it, but he was a family law attorney. He was a tough, I think who was Jimmy? Was it Jimmy Russell? Who was the state attorney before Bernie over there?
Jimmy Russell.
Yeah, he was I think a second or third in command with Jimmy Russell.
I met him, but I didn't know him very well.
Yeah, but the legend has it he got shot 6 or 7 times by an angry husband in a family law case.
Oh, wow.
And went on to practice family law for years and years and years afterwards. But I remember I was meeting with him once, and he said, "There's no room in this office that I'm not 5 feet away from a firearm," or something like that.
That's
They say
scary.
family law is one of the most dangerous.
Well, this client, obviously was in court and didn't have any weapons on him, but he was a tough guy.
Yeah.
He apologized later, but
Well, I guess when you get a life sentence or a
Yeah.
big sentence, you don't know how
it was a
you're gonna react.
mandatory life because it was first degree and they weren't seeking the death penalty, so it was a mandatory life sentence.
Gosh.
So,
So one of the other things that I love about you is our shared affinity for Nordstrom Cafe.
Yes.
We when I'm not on a diet tend to cross paths there a good deal, but I always enjoy seeing your meals that you post.
it's more fun than anything else. Now it's harder to do it because everything
Everything's
is
closed,
takeout.
yeah.
I had a cheeseburger from J. Alexander today.
That's one of your favorites. That one comes up a lot in the rotation.
Well, and that is so close to my office.
Is that why?
It's very close to my office, so it's easy for me. And they always have good, consistent food.
Yeah.
But I have fun more, posting the stuff and.
I definitely have jealousy over some of the meals that you're posting.
Well, there's basically three things that I post: Gator stuff, political stuff.
Yeah.
I'm a diehard Democrat,
you and I are lined up there.
and posting food.
Yeah, yeah. Who's your buddy that lives by you that you always talk to, going to get coffee with them on Sunday morning?
Oh, yeah. Basically, there's three people. Even though with the stay away thing, we haven't gotten.
There's
together.
one guy you're always kind of razzing a little bit.
Well, one guy, there's Mike Durig,
Okay.
his nickname Rabbit.
Okay.
There's Alan Granda.
Alan Grant is who I'm thinking of.
And there's also a vet, Dr. Allens. It's funny because I've known Alan since the kindergarten. We've known
I was
each
going to
other
ask
forever.
you guys must be childhood friends. Yeah.
But he is a diehard Trumper, and
Oh, is he really?
Oh yeah, and we're on great terms, but. I blocked him because
Oh, really?
I blocked him because
You couldn't read it, yeah.
He goes over the top, and I guess I do too. And it's better to. And when we have coffee, I promise you, politics just never enters into the conversation.
The 2016 election almost did me in. I was consuming so much media. I was listening to hours and hours of podcasts, hours and hours of news, reading the newspaper, reading Newsweek, reading all these things, and I was going to a therapist, and I had said to her, I'm really concerned about this, and she said to you, well, how much do you think it's really going to impact you personally? Now, this was before the election.
Yeah.
And the point she was making is, it's kind of your local politicians are going to impact. I don't think she saw what the future held. I think this might have been the outlier where it kind of impacts us all more than maybe might otherwise be true. But I've tried as best as possible this time around to pull back on it and not let it.
Well, one thing that I'm doing is I'm not making any predictions because I made a lot of predictions in 2016 and they were all wrong. So
Was everybody's predictions.
right. I never thought that Donald Trump would become president. I would have, just very confident he wouldn't get elected, but obviously I was wrong. So even though I believe that the midterm elections suggest that the blue wave is a lot bigger than it was in 2016. There's a lot of Trump supporters that will support him no matter what he says, no matter what he does.
30% that's just unwavering. But
Correct.
So if we can talk about, I try not to get into it too much on
No,
this
no,
show.
I won't get into it if you don't.
No,
want to.
I don't mind it. I don't want to be a left. Like I don't just want liberals listening to my show, but it is interesting to me, and I'm interested in your opinion. But a couple of things that I think about. Number one is I think that Hillary was a lightning rod. We don't have that lightning rod this time around, so that's number one. Number two, Trump was an unknown quantity the first time around. He's not an unknown quantity anymore. So those two things together, I don't know how much those make a difference this time around. I wouldn't mind if Bernie was the candidate. It doesn't look like it's going to be him. It looks like it's going to be, Biden. I don't know. I don't feel that he's necessarily the strongest person we could be putting up against Trump. But I also, in the context of the times that we live in with this virus and everything else going on, I don't know how you can predict it because the base is just so out of whack.
I have no idea when all this is said and done regarding the coronavirus. I don't know what impact this is going to have on the political scene. Anybody can predict, but I really have no clue. What I think, from my prejudiced perspective, I think what it's showing is that generally President Trump is ill-equipped to handle crises. I think that you're right. I think the fact that Hillary was a lightning rod, and I do think that the benefit of a Joe Biden compared to a Bernie is that he's, I think, going to be much more helpful in getting the moderates and the even some Republicans that do not like Trump. and the swing states are the key thing.
Right.
From my understanding of the political scene is that Biden would be much more able to win the swing states, the ones that actually lost the election for Hillary last time.
Yeah. Well, I hope they learned from her missteps that first time around, as far as where they campaign and where they spend their time and their money, and having a message that's not, never Trump as your message.
And I hope that the Bernie supporters, because I do believe that there's almost no chance that Bernie will be the nominee. I really hope that the Bernie supporters jump on the bandwagon. I think that they were.
Well, I'm a Bernie supporter, and I will jump on the bandwagon, but I'm not an extreme like. There's certain people who get really out there, So I think there. I don't know how much of his following I make up, if I'm a minority or a majority, but I definitely think that they're out there. I had someone mention to me the other day, because they did that the debate, and Biden announced that his vice president would be
a woman,
and so I forget who it was I was talking to, but I was like, do you think it's going to be who's the prosecutor from California?
Kamala Harris.
Kamala Harris. Do you think it's going to be Elizabeth Warren? Whatever. And someone said, well, I heard it might be Michelle Obama. And I was like,
well, I've heard that too.
Chills went up and down my spine. I mean, I would love, that would be the best thing ever for me.
I agree, but I've heard that thrown out on Facebook,
Yeah.
but I don't think that that's realistic. I haven't really heard anything that shows that she would be interested. I tend to think it's going to be Elizabeth Warren, Kamala Harris, Stacey Abrams, or Amy Klobuchar, or possibly Val Demings, the representative from Florida.
Okay.
Those are the names that I hear more than any other names.
What about a split card?
Could happen,
I'd love him to give Kasich a call.
I mean, somebody threw out, why don't they go with Oprah Winfrey? But that's not going to happen.
I would love. I can't. It's happened before, a split card, hasn't it?
Well, didn't happen with what's his name, McCain and not McCain. Yeah, McCain and I forget now his name. The vice presidential candidate for Al Gore.
Oh, yeah. The guy who got in trouble with sleeping around with his wife.
No.
Oh.
I think he was being. Well, he didn't be. He was being considered. I think,
but
he picked up Sarah Palin,
yeah.
but I think
he
was being
Lieberman.
Joe Lieberman.
Oh, Joe Lieberman. Okay,
he was being considered as a.
Didn't they co-author some bills together? Wasn't that?
He did. He did. He was being considered, but it never happened. But I thought it was being considered seriously. And back to the Bernie thing. I remember Sarah Silverman, the comedian, who was an ardent Bernie supporter.
Right.
And she was at the convention, I thought, and basically made a little speech and basically addressed the Bernie supporters. And if the question was, are you honestly thinking of staying home? Or are you honestly thinking of voting for Trump? Don't be ridiculous.
Yeah.
And I think that that's the message to the Bernie supporters, is that maybe Biden is not your first choice. I get that. But look at the alternative.
Well, and it kills me, and I've been trying to get him on here, but he's one of the busier attorneys locally, and he's one of my old kind of partners, Brian Camerino. We have this, running discussion that he doesn't vote or doesn't like to vote, and that just kills me. I know Matt Versailles,
believe me, he and I have been debating that for several years, since the 2016 election.
Yeah.
And I think his position is it doesn't make any difference. So why bother? I disagree with Bryant. I'm friends with Bryant, but I strongly disagree with him.
Have you been watching Ozark on Netflix? This
No.
series, great series if you have Netflix, called Ozark, and it's about this accountant and his wife, and they become money launderers up in the Ozarks and all this other stuff. But
no, I haven't even heard about it.
Really good. Jason Bateman is the lead actor and everything. Season 3 just came out on Friday, but he's a very logical guy, and kind of part of the problem is he's emotionally distant from his family, but he's very numbers driven, and they've gotten to the point in the season now where they've bought this gambling boat where they're laundering money for drug cartels in South America and all this other stuff. But he's pretty sure that FBI is investigating him, and he says, I can't predict what any one person can do, but if you give me 1 million people, I can predict within 0.3% of what they're going to do, and I can tell you what routines they're going to follow to do what it is that they're going to do. So that's the kind of thing that I think about when I hear, it doesn't matter if I vote or not. It's like, it matters if 1 million people vote or not. It matters,
Sure it does.
It's 1 million individuals, and
I mean, there's no question that Hillary did not get people excited, and a lot of people, there was a lot of apathy, and there's no question that if the Democrats had gotten a bigger turnout, it wouldn't have been close, because generally Democrats, and I don't have statistics to point out, but I think that there was just a bad turnout by Democrats.
they still have the majority.
They do. They do. They did. Yeah.
So anyway, well, now so going on 35, 40 years. So when did you pass the bar?
1977.
So have you seen anything even remotely similar to what we're going through with this COVID virus in your practice?
No, my practice is closed down for a couple of days for a hurricane.
Yeah, I mean, I've practiced through hurricanes. I was in law school during September 11th. No real wars since I've been in practice.
No, nothing. I have experienced nothing like this. Like I said, a hurricane might close you down for a day or two. The courts shut down for a day or two. 9/11 changed the procedures, such
More security,
as
yeah.
more security. But everything, I can't remember exactly, but I don't believe the courts shut down at all. Maybe one day, possibly. But
has your business slowed down at all?
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, and the phone doesn't ring as much when the courts are shut down. You can't set depositions, and potential clients aren't in the biggest rush in the world. If they have a court date coming up in a week or two,
right,
they're more motivated to call and hire you or make a payment or whatever. And that is not a big deal right now, because we don't even know when the courts are going to reopen, which is scary. I have no clue what the criminal courts are going to look like when we resume. I had a trial scheduled for today in Marion County. I had another one scheduled in Arcadia, April 13th.
Yeah.
I have no idea when all that is going to get rescheduled. And it's just me. Can you imagine the number of cases that have been rescheduled? And trials. I had a judge tell me last week, Thursday, that in Pinellas County, that even if they resume, say at the end of April, the clerk's office is saying for rescheduling of trials, it'll take another 6 weeks for the summons and everything to get out. So that means that even if we resume at the end of April, which is no guarantee, I don't think you're going to see trials until midsummer.
And what are they going to do with the trials that would normally be getting set? That you're going to be tripled? They're going to need extra divisions, or I don't know.
Well, I suspect that some of.
Or do you think there's going to be better deals offered, or?
I think I do think we're going to see some better deals along the way, because the system is getting overwhelmed. But the lengthier trials, some of which I have, will probably get bumped to 2021, because. Yeah. It's easy to schedule a 2-day trial, but how do you schedule a 3-week trial if you had blocked off 3 weeks in May or whatever?
Yeah, you must have to go another year out. Now you have 2 daughters?
2 daughters.
Are they at home right now with all this going on, or?
Well, no. My oldest is married and living in Denver. She was living in New York, but her husband got a different job in finance, same different company, and is living in Denver.
Is that a recent move, or?
Very recent, in the last couple weeks.
Oh wow!
And they lived in New York City for, I guess, 2.5 years, something like that.
It's good they got it when they did, because now you're persona non grata if you're from New York or New Jersey.
Exactly. Yeah, they moved in late. Well, it's been probably about 3 weeks now, and my youngest daughter is living at home because she's in college. But
Oh, they closed up.
she was supposed to get her degree in May 7th, and the commencement ceremony and all that has been canceled. I assume she'll still get her degree, but the commencement
Is that
ceremony.
she at UF?
No, she's at FAU.
Okay. What did she study?
Yeah, communications.
Oh, okay. And is your wife working, or is she?
No, she was a court reporter.
Okay.
When,
really?
When we first met,
Okay.
but after Elizabeth, the oldest daughter, was born, shortly after that she quit. So she's
Okay.
been a homemaker for 30 years.
Well, thank you so much for coming by. It's always a pleasure hearing your stories and running into you. I really appreciate you telling us about your time locally practicing law. How can people find you online? Do you have a website or?
I do. I
Probably don't even know what it is.
I don't even remember the.
Just Google Danny Hernandez or.
Yeah.
Do you professionally go by Danny or Danny?
My official name is Daniel M. Hernandez.
Okay.
But everybody calls me Danny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, if you are in need of a criminal attorney, state or federal level, there's not a better choice out there. He's a great guy, great attorney, and a great guest for our show. Thanks for stopping by.
Thank you, Josh. Take care.